All right. Hello, hello. It is Wednesday. Welcome to my Lunch and Learn, where each and every week we explore topics to help you elevate your mindset, be at your best, and radically expand your life and business. And I just got to switch my screen over. There we go. Here we go. Today is so amazing because we are going to be diving into something everyone wants, but very few people know how to actually create. And that is the topic of self-trust. So let's be honest. We've all started things that we haven't finished. You've made plans for yourself that somehow never got off the ground. And you're probably really good at showing up for others. But when it comes to following through on yourselves, have you ever had things just fall apart? So if you've ever started more things and stopped more things than you'd like, right? Hit the gas, hit the brakes, hit the gas, hit the brakes, and you're just like stuck. Maybe you've struggled to believe in your own follow through. Maybe you've wanted to feel solid or confident or aligned from the inside out, where what you do behind closed doors actually matches what people see of you on the outside. Today is for you. Because before we get into things, this is going to be a really great topic because this is really what's going to make you feel great. But before we get into things, I want to know where you're coming in from. If you're tuning in by replay, hit replay in the chat. And if it's your very first time here, type in first time in the chat. And I want to thank you for being here. I truly do appreciate your presence. So some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm Larisa McCooch, Canada's leading abundance mentor, and we work with professional women who have an interest in personal growth and development and are looking for even more out of life because they are finally ready to have a life and business they want and love. So today's topic is so powerful because we're talking all about integrity and self-trust. And if you're a high achieving woman with a big vision, you already know you don't lack ideas or drive. Like, you know how to create ideas, you know how to get moving, but maybe you feel a little frustrated with your own inconsistency. Maybe you feel frustrated with your ability to complete things and to really believe that you'll fully follow through at the level that you need to this time. It might seem like a motivation problem, but it's not what it is. What the problem is you've got an integrity gap. You've got that self-integrity gap. And what happens is every time you break a promise to yourself, no matter how small, you chip away at your self-trust. And without self-trust, it's so hard to deeply commit or make bold moves or feel aligned with your purpose. And I'm going to give you just a little example of this. Now, I remember I've always been fairly active, but I never was the kind of person that really loved exercise. And I remember in high school, we used to read magazines. I don't know if we had Cosmopolitan and other paper magazines. They're not as common these days. Like, they still exist at the grocery stores, but I like back then they were like the Bible. And so I would read magazines, and they'd have these little workouts in there, and they'd say you have to follow these rules to get these results. And it was nice and fine and dandy. But I remember I tried running. I tried becoming a runner because I wanted more cardio. I wanted to get rid of the jiggle on my waist. And the first day I made it like to the end of the block, which is about a half a block. And then I thought I was going to pass out. I was able to go around my neighborhood once, but 3/4 of it was walking. I could barely run, and I just felt like such a failure. And so this big dream I had of having this like toned and sleek and sexy waistline totally crumbled in less than one day. And I didn't have the integrity to follow through. I thought I had to do something, and I pretended to do it. And I was like, yes, I'm going to work out. I'm going to do what this guideline says. I'll do the push-ups, I'll do the tricep dips, and whatever else was in there. It was like pretty common and basic stuff. I'll do the crunches, but I never did. And I remember thinking, I'm like, you know what? Like, am I ever going to really commit to things? And I remember thinking that first day where I didn't even try. And I knew a part of me really wanted to, but I did not have the ability to follow through. I was like, I just feel like a total schmuck. but I'm just going to hide it. I'm not going to really tell anyone because I'm a dancer and I don't need to work out. I dance. That's enough. So I gave myself a little excuse, and I'm sure you've tried to commit to something, but you find really great excuses and reasons. And so one of the things I did do consistently was dance, and dance was very cultural. Dance was a part of my life. Dance was also in my schedule. I had to show up for class with other people, whether I wanted to or not. It was just what I did. And the reason I was able to be physical is because it was in my schedule and I just kept doing it. Everything else where I had to try to motivate myself, it didn't seem to work. And I didn't, it was a bit of a challenge or a bit of an issue, but I didn't really realize the implications of this until much later on, when about 15 years later, I found myself in a Pilates studio where I was running a Pilates studio, and I became a teacher, and it was part of my work, and I just stayed there in various capacities. But I started to fall in love with movement. And what happened is, as I fell in love with movement, I didn't call it exercise. I wanted to do more of it. It became a part of what I did because it was interesting, it was engaging, and it was fun. And I realized that when I want to make a commitment, I've got to do it on my own terms, but I've also got to do it in a way that's aligned and really does feel good for me. And I started building some of that self-trust back up because I was like, well, maybe I'm not an exerciser, but I'm a mover. And I started trusting that my body knows what it wants. And I started finding ways of moving that feel good. And now when it comes to movement and exercise, I do it very differently. I am able to do it on my own. I am able to do it consistently. And I have the motivation because I have a very different way of looking at it. And really having that integrity with self. I don't always want to work out every morning, but almost every single morning, I work out for a minimum of 10 minutes, or I exercise, or I move, or whatever I want to call it. But my commitment is every day I will do 10 minutes or more of movement. There's days where I keep going and I do more, but bare minimum, I will do 10 minutes of movement that wakes my body up and feels good. And since making that commitment to myself and being able to be diligent, I feel so much more confident in myself, in my physical capacity, and in my appearance and in my self-control. But it really is because I finally started showing up to myself. It wasn't for a class, it wasn't for someone else. So when it comes to this idea of self-trust, self-trust is the belief that you will do what you say you will do, even when you don't want to do it. It is built on evidence and your history with yourself. And just because you didn't have self-trust at one point doesn't mean you can't in the future. Now, the word integrity, this is about alignment, okay? Alignment between your words, your values, and your actions. And integrity means doing the right thing, even when, especially when no one is watching. So let's go deeper. What is personal integrity? Okay, integrity is alignment, but personal integrity means doing the right thing even when no one will know you did it. Maybe no one's watching, but you don't even need to tell people about it. You're just doing it because you know it's right for you. And so follow through is really where integrity becomes real, because without follow through, integrity is just a nice idea. So think of self-trust like a savings account. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you make a little deposit in the bank, in the piggy bank. And when you break a promise, you're making a withdrawal. And the more consistent you are, the more that bank builds, that bank balance builds, and the more the interest builds, the more it starts growing. And what happens is it turns into confidence, it turns into momentum. And over time, if you do it with a level of intelligence and awareness, turns to clarity. So let's look at the science behind this. There's research that shows follow through impacts your self-worth. And when you set a goal and don't complete it, your brain stores it as a failure loop, and you go downward, downward, downward in the spiral. And if you do it often enough, it affects your confidence and your belief of what's possible, even your identity. But on the flip side, the reverse is also true. So small wins, even if they're teeny tiny, consistently repeated, reinforce the identity of someone who follows through. So it doesn't matter the size of the thing you're doing. If you follow through on something and you decide in that moment you're a person that follows through on their commitments, you get another deposit in the reciprocity bank. And this is the foundation of neuroplasticity, because your brain is actually rewiring to reflect what you repeatedly do. I make promises and keep them. Great. So every time you keep that promise to yourself, you are literally rebuilding the architecture of your self belief. And so let's be real. It's really easy to show up when someone else is watching, when you have to send a text message, when you have to show up to a class, when you have to follow through on something you said publicly, and you've got that deadline and someone else is waiting, because we're conditioned to keep our word to others. It's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. But where it counts the most is keeping your word to yourself, because that's where true confidence lives. It's not in how you're perceived, not in how you feel when others are around, but in how you show up and how you feel when no one is watching. And there, you're able to do it. But the question is, are you willing to do it? And sometimes you need to condition that consistency muscle to be able to show up to others on a consistent basis, even before you can show up to yourself. I think accountability with others is fantastic because it teaches you the muscle of showing up. And then the extra layer on the cake, the icing on the cake, where you build that inner confidence, that inner trust, is when you start doing it without having to report. Okay, so external accountability absolutely does help you stay on track, and it's most powerful when it's used to support your own internal accountability. So both the inner and outer, they count and they're important. And so this is why I work with my own accountability coach. I don't always meet my commitments, but when I don't, I get questioned, and I have to reflect and think about, why didn't I meet that commitment? But then it also encourages me to make more commitments. Why? Because I'm going to have to share something with someone, and I want to report something good. And when my clients, about a year ago, they started asking me for more structured accountability. They're like, Larisa, you teach amazing stuff, but I don't know how to really put it together to make it work in a streamlined way. And so I created the abundance focus system, which is not just about tracking tasks and a to-do list, but it's a structure, it's a system that reconnects you to your why, that helps you follow through on what matters most, and builds that self-integrity muscle each and every day. So we do a part of this system as a group, and then a part of it is done on your own, so you could truly build the inner and the outer. And both are required. So I'm going to give you an example. And there was one of my clients, and we have a whole talk that we did together a few weeks back. So if you're interested in Demi's talk, private message me and say Demi, Demi. Demi is one of our clients. And I'm just going to share a little bit about her story. But what happened is she has a lot on the go. She's got 4 kids under 5 years of age. She is the primary breadwinner. Her husband actually stays home with the kids, but she wants to be around too. And she works in a very busy law office. She wears about 4 different hats in this place. So she's got very many different roles and parts of the business she's involved in. And so when I met with her, she was like, I've got all these dreams, things are going really well, but something is missing. And I can't keep following through because all of my days get swallowed up by my work. She's like, I have days off on my schedule, but I basically just, instead of working at work, I spend the days working at home. And I'd rather be talking and playing and engaging with my kids, but it's just not happening. I have these big projects that are due that I'm not able to finish because, I have to hire someone new. Something else comes up, a fire comes up at work. And these projects, some of them had really big deadlines, and she was just tired of going in the same cycle. So we fall into the same kind of cycle. You've probably got your own variation of that. So what we did is she decided to join the abundance focus system because she's like, I've got good mindset. I know I could do it. I just need guidance. And so we really looked at her schedule, her life, and her goals. And there was one main goal that she wanted to accomplish this quarter. And then she had several others that basically couldn't happen until this first part of it was done. So we created a schedule for 5 weeks because she had a 5-week deadline to meet this goal. And she thought it would take a certain amount of time. We looked at every day and every part of every day to find and carve out the time to meet this commitment. And we sat there and we did the math. She was accountable to me in the moment by putting it in the schedule. We did the work right there and right then. And then her part of it was actually following the time blocks and having the conversations with her team and with her office and with her family to ask for certain help so she could follow through on the commitments. She did that. She got to work. Not everything worked out as anticipated, but for the most part, she was able to stick to most of her plan. And in 2.5 weeks, instead of the 5 she anticipated, the big project she'd been putting off for a couple of years got done. And this is an example of what can happen when you have that external and internal accountability. But for her to have that confidence, like, holy moly, like, I really did do this. And she had more time off with her kids and family. She had her self time, even in the midst of such a huge commitment. And that's really what happens, because that was a real big eye opener for her, that it's not just about the schedule, but it was about her innate commitment to herself and to follow through and not cheat and not let things slide because it was important. And so here is the truth. You will never outperform your self-trust, right? You will never outperform it. So if you want to create momentum, if you want to deepen your confidence, if you want to feel clear and grounded, you need to do that as you move towards your dreams. You need to start honoring the promises you make to yourself, even if they're little, even if they're big, day by day, week by week. Start small, keep it simple. It does not have to be rocket science, but it does have to be done. It does have to get done. Follow through, follow through, follow through, and do it with compassion, not perfection. You don't need to beat yourself up when you fall off the wagon, because you probably will. But what you must learn to do is get back on. So if you were to even think of one promise you can make to yourself, keep it small to start. If you're not used to doing this, keep it small. What's a promise you can make to yourself and keep? Maybe you've made promises and you've tried making so many promises and none of them work. Well, if you were going to make one promise that you kept putting off, what would that promise be? So this is going to start helping you rebuild that self-trust over and over and over, because you will have that integrity with yourself. And if you feel like you're like, this is really sitting, this is really landing, I want to have that inner, but I also need a little bit of external accountability to help me hold myself to my highest level of integrity, to remind myself, like, is this actually happening? So to remind myself to be compassionate when I do fall off the wagon. If you're looking for additional support to achieve your goals and dreams, to plan out a next season of your life or business, then drop the word focus in the chat and I will send you something to help you get started. Next week, we're actually going to be holding a focus formula masterclass, which is really, really exciting, because this is an opportunity where you're going to be able to really look at some structural and strategic elements and critical mistakes that a lot of people make when they're trying to focus, when they're trying to hold themselves accountable. And so I invite you to join me if you feel like you've been spinning your wheels and you want some of this structure just like Demi had. And I'm going to share some really simple and straightforward productivity tips to get and keep you motivated, and the steps you must take in order to have the clarity, confidence, and conviction you desire in your life, because your integrity absolutely counts. And when you start building the infrastructure for that, then you can have that. So type in focus in the chat if you're interested in joining us. As soon as the information is available, we will let you know. But we are talking all about the focus formula that you can plug into. It is a no-brainer. It is simple. It is straightforward, and it can absolutely help you change the trajectory of your life, and not just try to have that integrity, but build the external structure to support that internal integrity for yourself. So I hope this is landing. Hope this is making sense to you guys. Thank you for joining me. Drop focus in the chat if you want to join us and if you want to learn more and get access. So for now, I'm signing off. I will see you again very, very soon.